Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
Well, welcome back to America's Heroes Group with our roundtable community outreach with NADCP, the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. Today is Saturday, February 25th, 2023. February is Black History and American Heart Month. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Arnold Productions. And we have a panelist with us today. That's James Eberspacher. He is the director of the National Center for DWI Courts, the NCDC. NCDC is a division of the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. We're going to discuss veterans advocacy and the DWI courts, driving while intoxicated. Some people call it DUI. We want to talk about that and get to the bottom of it and what's going on in this very pervasive topic. How are you doing, James?
I'm wonderful. How are you today?
Pretty good. So
thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
We appreciate you being here. We've talked about this topic a little bit in the past. Now, how pervasive is alcoholism among veterans? And from your professional and personal experience, in what way does alcohol abuse get veterans in trouble with the law?
Well, I don't have specific numbers in terms of, those addicted to alcohol specifically. But what we do know is there's, a large percentage of veterans coming back into society, and often their coping mechanism, if they have some mental health issues or anything like that, or having trouble reintegrating into society, substances, be it alcohol or other illicit drugs, often come into play, to hide pain, to mask pain. And then, those issues then become even more pervasive in that we see veterans entering into the justice system, whether it's their first time or they're repeat customers. A good chunk of them are coming in with a DWI, on an impaired driving case, and largely associated with alcohol. But what we're seeing also when it comes to impaired driving, it's not an alcohol issue only anymore. It's more of a polysubstance issue. And then also when you combine that with the large amount of mental health needs and issues that impaired drivers have, not to mention veterans, it just really compounds the problem, and it just keeps getting larger and larger if we don't have the resources to be able to treat individuals in a way that's actually helpful.
Wow, I think that hits it on the head. In 2022, you did a conference I saw on YouTube. It was a DUI court standards. You gave a talk about that, and you mentioned a case specifically, which really struck me. You said there was a chart you pulled up, and there was a person getting pulled over for like the third time driving under the influence. And you said that a lot of times they don't think that they have a problem. They think that the system has a problem with them as it pertains to veterans. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Exactly. Yeah. The case you mentioned, is be it that case, anybody can go online, watch the news, partake in wherever you get your news from. And it's riddled with cases like that, multiple time, repeaters, where, is beyond their first. A couple of quick stats just to throw them out there for you. 2/3 of the people that get arrested for a DUI, I'm going to use those words interchangeably, so forgive me, who get arrested for a DUI never come back into the system for another one. So it's that other 1/3 that we have to try to figure out why is it that they're coming back. It's very often that they don't think they have the problem, right? Or the system's out to get them, as you had mentioned. And part of that comes with when you think about the act of impaired driving itself. We often take for granted as individuals the complex task of driving a car, right? I mean, it becomes such a second nature to us, to the point that, we just get the car started up and be on our merry way. We really don't think about the steps that it takes. So then somebody who does this repeatedly under the influence, without regard really for anybody on the road, be it pedestrians, people on bikes or people in vehicles, whatever it may be. There's this really antisocial trait that goes along with that. And if you are putting alcohol and other drugs along with that, again, it becomes just kind of this compounding effect of I don't have the problem, you have the problem, and I don't really need anybody's help.
Wow. That's really interesting, because you would think that someone, when you hit a brick wall and it hurts, at some point you say, okay, something's wrong here. It can't be the wall's fault. If I'm the one hitting the wall's not going anywhere.
Right. Yeah. It's common when it comes to impaired driving, especially common messages and prevention efforts that you and I we'll see on the TV or hear on the radio or, so whatever ad campaign it is, we get it, right? We understand the scourge that impaired driving can have on our communities and does have on our communities. And, it kills over 10,000 people every single year in the United States. And so when we're faced with that issue, we absolutely have to do more about it.
So tell us about the DWI court in Minnesota. How is it different than regular traffic court or criminal court?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So DUI courts, generally, whether they're in Minnesota or, they're in Virginia or Illinois or, wherever they're located, operate fundamentally the same. There are some differences based upon, jurisdictions and the resources that are available for treatment and mental health and a lot of these other wraparound services that individuals need. But essentially somebody comes in, they're arrested for a DUI. It's likely going to be a repeater, meaning they've had more than one. Generally what we see, DUI courts are for a high risk, high need population. And what I mean by that is things that they've been involved in the justice system in the past, previous, interventions, be it jail, treatment, standard probation out in the community, whatever the case may be, that has failed, right? It hasn't worked to change that individual's behavior. So if we continue to subject somebody to the same interventions, knowing that it's not going to change, it's us beating our head against a brick wall, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we look at that high risk population, that's who we're targeting essentially with a DUI court, somebody who repeatedly has, gets behind the wheel. They're likely not caught most of the time, right? So for them to get 2, 3, 8, 9, or 10 DUIs on their record takes some skill in a really negative way. And then when we look at high need, it's individuals who have a significant substance use disorder, with any type of impairing substance, who have very often mental health needs, but also have kind of these other factors, be it to hang out with the wrong crowd, right? Or, there's a family history of drug use or substance use disorders. Maybe their job's not stable. Maybe their housing's not stable. And so if we're not targeting all of these other needs that they have, we can treat the individual, but for kind of this all-around behavior change that we're thinking about in a DUI court, it takes a long time. Usually we're looking at anywhere between a year and 2 years that individuals are involved in a program like this. It's intensive individualized treatment. There's strict accountability where they have to check in with their probation officer, usually weekly. They're seeing a judge every week, to come back in and just monitor how the case is going. They're getting drug tested and they're getting alcohol tested on a daily basis for alcohol early on and at least a couple times a week. So it's that balance of accountability along with those need factors that everybody that's on the team helping the individual, they all have a role in linking up the individual with services so we can see that whole change from a person, not just in one area.
And you've had a lot of success with this, what it seems like. No, I think it's great because the thing of it is that it's so important for people to understand is that this type of approach has actually been more productive and effective than basic criminal court and this regular traffic court. This idea of either just punishing someone and slapping them on the wrist, or then upping the punishment every time they get caught. You're talking about people getting caught 8 or 9 times. I can't even understand how that is even possible. How does a person, I mean, as an aside, how does a person get caught 8 or 9 times and not end up in like prison for 20 years? How does that happen?
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I'd mentioned this a little bit, but I'll touch on a bit more. What we see, to get caught 8 or 9 times, it's not just that the person's unlucky. It's because they're doing it on a daily basis, multiple times a day. When there's some research that supports people have usually driven probably around 200 times, if not more, impaired before they're ever caught. So if you think about it, so then the person who has 8 or 9 convictions, do the math quickly, and you can figure out, that they're driving all the time, and it doesn't matter what you do in terms of taking away their license, they're going to drive. So there's a lot of interventions that are available, but when you have, the U.S. has approximately, give or take in a year, about 1 million total arrests for impaired driving across the nation. And if we're looking at just jail or not really, peeling back the layers of what is driving that behavior, pardon the pun, it's just putting people in jail and having no services, especially for this high-risk, high-need population, simply doesn't work. And while it might make us feel safe and better for the moment, also, if you're being arrested for your 8th, 9th, or 10th DUI, you're not going to jail or prison forever. I mean, I've rarely seen, if at all, you'd really have to do some research to find if anybody's ever served a life sentence strictly for a DUI where there's no fatality or no, severe bodily injury. It just doesn't happen. So what happens when the person comes out? If we haven't treated them, we haven't given them the services that they need, people go right back into the same behaviors.
Wow.
And so that's why we often see somebody get multiples, because the regular stuff that we do in the traditional system doesn't work for somebody who habitually drives impaired and has a significant substance use disorder.
So tell us some of the success of what the court has done. So DWI courts and DUI courts, what are the numbers that show that they've been more successful than regular courts?
Yeah. So, again, for this specific population, that high risk, high need, I have to reinforce that because that's really, I want to make sure folks listening are clear on who's it for. Generally speaking, somebody who's a first timer, or who maybe have significant, periods of their life where, maybe they got one 20 years ago and now they got one again. That's usually not our population that we're looking for. And then those who can't control their using behavior because they have a chronic disease, and that's a substance use disorder. So without the significant treatment, without the accountability and some of this behavior change, we're not going to see the successes that DUI courts have. And, when we're looking at this, the best DUI courts from around the nation, the research is clear. They reduce overall general recidivism by up to 60%.
Wow.
As compared to, doing something with similar individuals and just putting them in jail or just giving them community supervision or, whatever it may be. So, if we can reduce, that recidivism for just overall general crimes by that much, I mean, that shows the power. And when we're looking at, the future for impaired driving cases, a lot of the courts I've seen that have that data, people are not, for the most part, getting rearrested for DUI. I mean, we're talking some of these courts for people who graduate from these programs maybe see a 2%, 10% recidivism rate when it comes specifically to impaired driving. So they're highly successful. And we know that by keeping the people engaged and giving them the treatment that they need and correcting or giving them the tools to correct all these other issues that get in the way of, living a normal life like you and I would, they're going to be back in the system at some point. And so this is the best way we know that, has the research, has the data to support that, of their efficacy, and they're also efficient. In the long run, they save taxpayer dollars. Just, with $1 investment, we see roughly about a $2 to $3 return on investment. So wow. It's money spent wisely as well, which, I think we all as taxpaying citizens want to make sure, that money is going to useful things, and they definitely are when it comes to all treatment courts and DUI courts especially.
It's been amazing because we had a lot of judges and lawyers and people that are social workers who work with people that have substance abuse issues, and they all have said the exact same thing, is that when you have veterans courts, DUI courts, these types of interventions are way more cost effective and also way more effective at solving the problem.
Absolutely.
But it takes a shift in mindset from being just a punishment mindset. Well, if I hit you enough times, you'll stop doing it, versus recognizing that a certain part of the population, as you mentioned, not everybody, but a certain part of the population, the ones that are getting arrested 8-9 times, those individuals need something stronger than just punishment. And it seems like the stronger tool in the arsenal is treatment with accountability, as you mentioned before. So in the future, what is being done? Tell us about your work to try to expand DWI courts and DUI courts across the country or across the court system?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question. As the work that I do, I oversee, our division that NCDC that's specific to all of our training and technical assistance that we provide to jurisdictions that want to start a DUI court, maybe already have one, or want to add, a track. And what I mean by that is, like, if they have an existing veteran treatment court, if they want to target specifically individual needs for veterans who are there for impaired driving cases, because it's a different type of individual. And so part of our message is one, getting the public and people to understand exactly what we were just talking about. Jail and punishment doesn't work for these individuals. People who have a severe substance use disorder it's a chronic disorder. And we've, for too long, have treated it like an acute care model, meaning that we send somebody to treatment for a little bit and we expect them to get well and be better. And then when they use again, instead of wondering what went wrong, we blame them and treat it as a moral failure very often. And this is a completely different look. And we want people to know and understand that message, that they're individuals, but if not for their substance use disorder or their significant mental health issues, they wouldn't be involved in the system. And so us getting that message out, some of the other things we do is we work with judges. We work pretty tirelessly around the country, training individuals, not just about DUI courts, but about what can your community do better, as opposed to just having, jail as a possible remedy, or as a possible, sentence for these individuals. And so we like to educate folks on, we have to identify them early on. We want them to start DUI courts where it makes sense and they have that high risk, high need population that, nothing else is working. And thus far, since I came to NCDC, which was in 2014, we've seen DUI courts steadily climb, and we're up to over 700 across the nation, which is great, but we still have a lot of work to do, especially in larger cities where they don't have programs like this.
So in your community interventions and outreach, there's people out there that know someone right now that has a problem drinking or with substance abuse, and they know they drive every day under the influence. They know that they're going to be driving tonight under the influence, and they expect that. What can that person do to get them into your system, into a DWI court or some kind of treatment program like what you're talking about? Is that a thing?
Yeah. I mean, so, if you have concerns, I think you could ask anybody, a couple of questions. One, do they know anybody that's ever had a DUI? Most of us know at least one person that's gotten one. And then the other part of that is we likely all also know at least one person, whether it's the same person or not, who has significant issues with drugs and alcohol, or have significant mental health issues. And so the best thing, is to look for help for the individual. Unfortunately, the only way that an individual can be involved in a program like this is to be arrested. That's kind of the intercept point in a system. But yet that arrest may also be the starting point for somebody to have significant life change, right? And get out of the system. So, one of the things that, and this may seem, I don't know how this will come across to some of your listeners, but if you know anybody that's driving impaired, the authorities have to be, called. We need to protect our communities from this problem, and there's no community that's essentially safe from impaired driving, right? It's everywhere. So we have to do our part as citizens to make sure, that we can do anything to keep our roads safe. But if we know certain individuals and if they have been arrested, contact, defense attorneys, look to see if there are programs like this in the community, and bottom line is try to get if the person needs treatment, getting them involved in treatment and getting them services that they need as quick as possible. And that's really when we see people changing, is when we can get them involved as quick as possible after arrest. And there are some communities who are doing an excellent job of that. And it's just a matter of days, as opposed to, what we generally see for an impaired driving case to go through a court system. It might take a year or more before convictions ever, and there's ever a sentence. And so those individuals, if they're out of jail, are doing the same kinds of behaviors, right, that got them there in the first place.
Mm-hmm. You remind me of a story, my own story, really. When I was in the military, I was picking up somebody during a flood. It was a flood going on in Chicago, and all the viaducts were flooded out. And then one of my friends her car was stranded under a viaduct. The water was up to her windows. So the police were out actually shutting down Lakeshore Drive. So I went to go get her. I had to get out of my car and actually walk to go get her. She was also in the military at the time. And we're doing drill that week. It was a drill weekend. So when I'm going back to my house for the night, we had to report back early in the morning. A drunk driver slammed into the back of my Mustang, totaled the car, flew me into oncoming traffic. And there was a line of traffic, going the opposite direction, trying to get into the expressway, but couldn't because it was flooded. I could smell the alcohol in the guy about 10 feet away. As soon as I got out of the car, I asked the guy if he was drunk, and the guy spoke. I don't know if he was speaking broken English or if he was so intoxicated he could barely speak. Stumbled out of the car, had no license, no insurance, and had been arrested previously. The reason why he lost his license and insurance is because he was from DUI. So from there, I can see the severity of the problem. Also, on full disclosure, in 2007, I was drunk one time. Thought I had slept it off and had not and Ben was okay for a long, long time. And I was arrested for DWI. Now it was questionable at the time because the guy that was, I don't know the full disclosure, but there was the guy that actually did the arrest. He's known in Chicago, Joe Darther Parker, was suspended for doing false arrests for DUIs. So he had arrested a ton of people in Chicago that were not drunk at all. One of the person that actually got him his badge was allergic to alcohol and could not have been drunk. So he had a history of doing this type of thing. But yet still, that taught me a lesson. Even yet still, having been a victim and also yet still knowing that I had drunk earlier, it should have been taking my butt straight home or just chilling at the house or whatever, or just staying where I was at. Still, got behind the wheel of a car.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I really appreciate you sharing both sides of that, and you have the unique perspective of being able to see both sides of that, and I'd be interested to know from you, is whether you were the person that's just as involved because you were caught, or as a victim. Were those feelings about, that kind of part of your life or that time or when it was happening, did you have different thoughts and attitudes being a victim as opposed to being the person arrested?
No, that's a great question. Now we got to have you back to talk about that because we ran out of time, unfortunately. We got 15 seconds left and I got the music playing. So thanks for your time, Jim Eberspacher. He is the director of the National Center of DWI Courts, NCDC. And the NCDC is a division of the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate having me on.
This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.